At 4:47 a.m. on September 17, 1942, Private Vasily Grigorievich Zaytsev crouched in the hull of a barge crossing the Volga River as German artillery shells exploded in the water around him. Each impact sent geysers of black water 40 feet into the air. Shrapnel punched through the wooden sides of the vessel. Men screamed. The barge carried 380 soldiers of the 1047th Rifle Regiment, 284th Rifle Division. They were crossing from the eastern bank to reinforce the collapsing Soviet defenses in Stalingrad. The city was dying. German forces had penetrated to within 200 yards of the Volga in multiple locations. If the Wehrmacht reached the river and secured the banks, Stalingrad would fall. The war would be lost. Zaytsev was 27 years old. He'd grown up in the Ural Mountains near Magnitogorsk, hunting deer and wolves with his grandfather from age 5. His grandfather had taught him to track prey through snow, read wind patterns, estimate range without instruments, and shoot accurately at distances beyond 400 yards. By age 12, Zaytsev could hit a running wolf at 300 yards with iron sights. These skills meant nothing in modern warfare. The Soviet army didn't care about hunting experience. They cared about warm bodies to throw at German machine guns. Zaytsev had spent the previous 4 months in the Soviet Pacific Fleet as a clerk, processing supply requisitions, filing reports, wasting time while Germany crushed his homeland. He'd requested transfer to a combat unit 14 times. Each request was denied. On September 15th, his 15th request was approved. Not because anyone recognized his skills, but because the Red Army was bleeding to death in Stalingrad and needed every man who could hold a rifle. The barge reached the western bank at 5:03 a.m. German mortars had the landing zone zeroed. The first shell hit before the ramp dropped. It killed 11 men instantly. Zaytsev jumped into chest-deep water and waded toward shore. Bullets chopped the surface around him. Men fell face first into the Volga. The water turned red. He reached the bank and ran toward a collapsed building 60 yards ahead. Machine gun fire tore up the ground to his left. He dove behind a pile of rubble. 3 other soldiers made it to the same position. 2 were wounded. 1 was already dead but hadn't fallen over yet. The German positions were 180 yards west. The Soviets held a thin strip of rubble along the riverbank, maybe 400 yards deep at its widest point. Beyond that, the Wehrmacht controlled everything. The tactical situation was simple. Hold the riverbank or die trying. There was nowhere to retreat. The Volga was behind them. Deserters were shot by NKVD blocking detachments. Senior Sergeant Fyodor Chernov found Zaytsev at 6:20 a.m. Chernov commanded what remained of a rifle platoon, 43 men that morning, down from 180 men 2 weeks earlier. He was assigning Zaytsev to a defensive position when he noticed the Mosin Nagant rifle Zaytsev carried. Standard issue, but Zaytsev had modified it. He'd wrapped the barrel in cloth to prevent sun glare. He'd adjusted the trigger pull weight. He'd carved notches in the stock to improve grip. Chernov asked if Zaytsev knew how to use the rifle. Zaytsev said he'd been hunting since childhood. Chernov didn't believe him. Every new soldier claimed to be a great shot. Most couldn't hit a barn from inside the barn. But Chernov was desperate. German snipers were killing his men faster than Soviet command could replace them. Yesterday alone, snipers had killed 9 of his soldiers. Clean headshots, instant death. The Germans were shooting from concealed positions in ruined buildings across no man's land. Soviet soldiers were afraid to move during daylight. They stayed hidden, which meant they couldn't fight, which meant German infantry advanced unopposed. Chernov pointed at a German position 200 yards northwest. "There's a sniper in that building, 2nd floor, left window. He killed 2 of my men this morning." "Can you hit him?" Zaytsev studied the building. The window was partially collapsed. He could see darkness inside, but no movement. The angle was poor. Morning sun was rising behind the Soviet positions, which meant it was shining directly into that window. Any German sniper in that room would be backlit. Easy target. Too easy. "He's not there," Zaytsev said. "That window is a decoy. The real position is 1 floor up, right side. See that ventilation grate? It's been removed. That's his firing position." Chernov looked at the grate. He couldn't see anything. Just a dark hole in the wall. "How do you know?" "The sun angle. From the 2nd floor window, the glare would blind him. From the 3rd floor, the shadow from the roof overhang gives concealment, and the grate opening is small. Limits his field of fire, but protects him from counter-snipers. That's where I would position myself." Do you want to see how Zaytsev's first shot changes everything? Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Stalingrad. Chernov had been fighting in Stalingrad for 11 days. He'd seen 140 men die, some from artillery, some from machine guns, some from snipers who were invisible, untouchable, unstoppable. If this new private actually knew what he was doing, if he could kill even one German sniper, it would save Soviet lives. "Show me," Chernov said. Zaytsev settled into a prone position behind the rubble pile. He chambered a 7.62 by 54 mm round. The Mosin Nagant M9130 was a bolt-action rifle weighing 8.8 pounds with a 5-round internal magazine. Effective range was 500 yards with iron sights, 800 yards with a scope. Zaytsev's rifle had no scope. Soviet military doctrine didn't prioritize sniper equipment. Scopes were rare, poorly manufactured, and usually misaligned. Iron sights were more reliable. He controlled his breathing. Slow inhale, slow exhale. His heart rate dropped to 52 beats per minute. The rifle barrel steadied. He calculated wind drift. Light breeze from the southeast, maybe 4 some more miles per hour. At 200 yards, the wind would push the bullet approximately 2 inches right. He adjusted aim to compensate. At 6:34 a.m., a shadow moved behind the ventilation grate, just a flicker. Most soldiers wouldn't have noticed. Zaytsev saw it immediately. The German sniper was repositioning, probably shifting to a different firing angle. For exactly 1.2 seconds, part of his head would be visible through the grate opening. Zaytsev waited. His finger rested on the trigger. Not pulling yet, just contact. The shadow moved again. The German's forehead appeared in the grate opening. Zaytsev fired. The 7.62 mm round traveled at 2,800 feet per second. It crossed 200 yards in approximately 0.21 seconds. The bullet entered the German soldier's skull above his right eye, penetrated his brain, and exited through the back of his head. The German sniper died before the sound of the gunshot reached his ears. Chernov saw the impact through binoculars. "You hit him?" "Yes." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Chernov studied the ventilation grate for 3 minutes. No movement, no return fire. The German sniper was either dead or had abandoned his position. Either outcome was acceptable. "How many Germans can you kill?" Chernov asked. "All of them," Zaytsev said. Over the next 4 days, Zaytsev killed 32 German soldiers, all confirmed kills, all headshots or upper torso hits that resulted in instant death. He operated alone, moving between positions in the rubble, never staying in one location more than 20 minutes. German counter-snipers tried to locate him. They failed. Zaytsev understood concealment better than they did. He understood patience. He never took a shot unless conditions were perfect. His reputation spread through the Soviet lines. Soldiers started calling him the Hare because of how quickly he moved between positions. Officers started requesting his assignment to their sectors. Political officers took notice. By September 22nd, Zaytsev had killed 47 Germans. On September 24th, he killed 12 more. On September 26th, the journalist Vasily Grossman interviewed him for an article in the Red Army newspaper, Red Star. Grossman asked him how he'd become such an effective sniper. Zaytsev explained his childhood hunting experience, the skills his grandfather had taught him, how tracking a German soldier through a destroyed city was no different than tracking a wolf through a forest. You studied patterns, you learned behavior, you waited for mistakes. The article was published on September 28th. It described Zaytsev as the terror of the fascists and the deadliest rifle in Stalingrad. The propaganda value was enormous. Soviet soldiers needed heroes. Zaytsev became that hero. His kill count was announced daily over Radio Moscow. Other soldiers started imitating his techniques. Senior Lieutenant Vasily Ivanovich Zaytsev, now promoted from private, became the most famous sniper in the Red Army. By October 15th, his confirmed kill count reached 149 German. Command took notice. Wehrmacht intelligence identified Soviet sniper activity as a significant problem. In some sectors, German casualties from snipers exceeded casualties from all other sources combined. Soldiers were refusing to move during daylight. Officers were being targeted specifically. One Soviet sniper, reportedly the same soldier featured in Red Army propaganda, was responsible for approximately 60% of sniper kills in the central sector. This was unacceptable. German doctrine emphasized aggressive offensive action. Soldiers who were afraid to move couldn't attack. If Soviet snipers weren't eliminated, the entire offensive would stall. On October 18th, Wehrmacht command in Stalingrad received a communication from Berlin. Says Standartenführer Heinz Thorwald, director of the Wehrmacht sniper school in Zossen, was deploying his best instructor to Stalingrad with a specific mission: locate and eliminate the Soviet sniper known as Zaytsev. The instructor's name was Major Erwin König. He'd trained 400 Wehrmacht snipers over 3 years. He had 178 confirmed kills himself, accumulated during campaigns in Poland, France, and Ukraine. He used a Carabiner 98K rifle fitted with a Zeiss ZIF-42 telescopic sight, accurate to 1,000 yards. He'd never failed to eliminate a target once assigned. König arrived in Stalingrad on October 21st. He brought 3 other snipers with him, all Zosin graduates, all experienced. German command briefed them on Zaytsev's patterns, the sectors where he operated, the types of positions he preferred, the timing of his attacks. König studied the intelligence for 6 hours. Then he did something unexpected. He went to the front lines alone, no escort, and spent 18 hours observing Soviet positions through binoculars. He wasn't hunting yet. He was learning, understanding the environment, seeing what Zaytsev saw. On October 23rd at dawn, König positioned himself in a destroyed water tower 340 yards from Soviet lines. The tower's observation deck gave him a panoramic view of the entire sector. From there, he could see 9 different Soviet positions where a sniper might operate. He settled in and waited. At 7:18 a.m., a German soldier in a forward trench stood up to adjust his helmet. Stupid mistake. Fatal mistake. A single shot cracked across no man's land. The soldier's head snapped back. He dropped, dead before he hit the ground. König marked the sound direction, southwest, range approximately 220 yards. The shot had come from a pile of collapsed masonry near the corner of a destroyed apartment building. König studied that position through his scope. He saw nothing, no movement, no reflection, no disturbance, but he knew the Soviet sniper was there, somewhere in that rubble, invisible, patient, deadly, the most dangerous enemy König had ever hunted. At 9:35 a.m., another German soldier was shot. Different location, same sector. This time the shot came from the northeast. Range approximately 280 yards. König studied the new position. Again, nothing visible. The Soviet sniper was mobile. He was moving between positions faster than König could track him. This was advanced technique. Most snipers stayed in one location all day. Moving between positions during daylight was extraordinarily dangerous. One moment of exposure, 1 second of carelessness, and counter-snipers would locate you. But this Soviet moved with absolute confidence, like he owned the battlefield. König recognized the skill level immediately. This wasn't just a good sniper, this was a master, someone who understood the craft at the highest level, someone who'd been hunting predators, not just shooting targets. At 2:42 p.m., König saw something. A tiny reflection from the collapsed masonry pile. Just a momentary glint. Could be metal. Could be glass. Could be nothing. König watched that spot for 40 minutes without moving. His eye never left the scope. His breathing stayed controlled. His finger rested on the trigger. At 3:23 p.m., the reflection appeared again for exactly 0.8 seconds. König saw it clearly this time. Rifle barrel. The Soviet sniper was in that position. König could see approximately 8 inches of the barrel protruding from the rubble. No other part of the soldier was visible, just the weapon. König aimed at the spot where the rifle barrel disappeared into the rubble. If the Soviet sniper was prone, his head would be approximately 14 inches behind that point. König adjusted for distance and elevation. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then he stopped. Something was wrong. The reflection was too obvious. The barrel exposure was too clean. This wasn't carelessness. This was bait. The Soviet was trying to draw fire. He wanted König to shoot, which meant this rifle position was a decoy. The real position was somewhere else. König slowly moved his scope to the right. He studied every pile of rubble, every shadow, every potential position within 400 yards of the decoy rifle. It took him 12 minutes. Then he saw it. A ventilation duct from a collapsed building, partially buried in debris 60 yards east of the decoy rifle. The duct opening faced the German lines. Perfect firing position, completely concealed. Genius placement. König smiled. The Soviet sniper was good, better than good. He'd created a decoy position designed to expose counter-snipers. When König fired at the fake rifle, his muzzle flash would reveal his location. Then the Soviet would shoot König. Simple, effective, professional. But König hadn't fired. He'd recognized the trap. Now he had the advantage. He knew where the real position was. The Soviet didn't know König had figured it out. König aimed at the ventilation duct opening. He couldn't see the Soviet soldier. The interior was too dark, but he knew the sniper was there, somewhere in that darkness, watching the decoy rifle, waiting for a German to take the bait. König settled in. He would wait. Hours if necessary, days if necessary. Eventually, the Soviet would make a mistake. Everyone made mistakes. The key was patience. At 4:56 p.m., the Soviet moved, just slightly. A shadow shifted inside the ventilation duct. König saw it. He fired immediately. The 7.92 millimeter round crossed 340 yards and entered the duct opening. König heard metal impact metal, ricochet. The bullet had hit the inside of the duct wall. Not a kill shot, not even close. The Soviet returned fire. 3 shots in rapid succession, all aimed at König's position in the water tower. The first round missed by 2 feet. The second round hit the metal railing near König's left shoulder. The third round was perfect. It would have killed König if he hadn't moved. The bullet passed through the space where his head had been 0.4 seconds earlier. König rolled away from his position and descended the water tower ladder. The engagement was over. Both snipers retreated. No casualties. But both now knew the other existed. Both understood the skill level they were facing. This wasn't going to be a quick hunt. This was going to be a prolonged duel between experts. That night, Zaytsev reported the contact to his commander. He described the German sniper's tactics, the patience, the discipline, the near-perfect shot. This wasn't a regular Wehrmacht soldier. This was someone special, someone trained specifically for this mission. Political officer Danilov asked if Zaytsev was concerned. Zaytsev said no. Concern was irrelevant. The German sniper was hunting him. He was hunting the German sniper. One of them would die. The other would survive. That was the nature of war. But privately, Zaytsev was impressed. For the first time since arriving in Stalingrad, he'd encountered an opponent who thought like he did. Someone who understood concealment, deception, patience. Someone who could recognize a trap. This German was dangerous. More dangerous than anyone Zaytsev had faced before. Over the 3 days, König and Zaytsev engaged 4 times. Each encounter lasted between 40 seconds and 6 minutes. No casualties. Both snipers were too skilled, too careful. They studied each other, learning patterns, memorizing tactics. Each engagement provided information that would be useful in the next encounter. On October 27th, König killed a Soviet soldier who was standing near Zaytsev's position. The shot was deliberate provocation. König wanted Zaytsev to react emotionally. Anger led to mistakes. Mistakes led to death. Zaytsev didn't react. He remained hidden, patient, for his opportunity. On October 29th, Zaytsev killed a German officer 40 yards from König's position. Same tactic, same psychological pressure. König didn't react either. Both snipers understood the game. This wasn't about emotion. This was about skill. Soviet command was growing impatient. They'd promised the Red Army newspaper that Zaytsev would eliminate the German sniper within 48 hours. That deadline had passed. Now they were receiving questions from Moscow. Why hadn't Zaytsev succeeded? Was the propaganda about his abilities exaggerated? Political officer Danilov suggested Zaytsev request assistance from other snipers. Zaytsev refused. Multiple snipers targeting the same position would create chaos. Friendly fire risks would increase. The German would exploit the confusion. No, this duel had to remain one-on-one. Anything else would give the advantage to König. On November 1st, the temperature in Stalingrad dropped to 18 degrees Celsius. Snow began falling at dawn. By noon, the city was covered in 4 inches of fresh powder. The snow changed everything. Movement became visible. Tracks could be followed. Concealment became harder. Both snipers adjusted their tactics. Zaytsev moved to a new sector, a destroyed chemical factory near the Lazur district. The factory ruins provided hundreds of potential firing positions. Complex geometry, multiple levels, perfect environment for a sniper who understood 3-dimensional tactics. König tracked him there. On November 2nd at 10:15 a.m., he fired at what he thought was Zaytsev's position in a destroyed conveyor system 280 yards away. The shot missed. Return fire came from a completely different direction. König had been deceived again. The Soviet was using decoy positions more effectively than ever. By November 3rd, König had been hunting Zaytsev for 13 days. He'd fired 27 shots, 0 kills. This had never happened before. In previous campaigns, König's average time to eliminate a target was 3.6 days. Zaytsev was different. He was the most elusive target König had ever hunted. But König was patient. He'd studied Zaytsev's patterns for almost 2 weeks now. He understood how the Soviet thought, how he moved, where he positioned himself. The German sniper was close to solving the puzzle, very close. And when he solved it, Zaytsev would die. On November 4th at 5:32 a.m., Zaytsev positioned himself inside a destroyed boiler room in the chemical factory's western section. The room was partially collapsed. Steel pipes created natural concealment. Through a gap between two pipes, he had clear line of sight to German positions 240 yards northwest. He'd been in this position for 90 minutes, motionless, patient. König was out there somewhere. Zaytsev could feel it. The German sniper had been tracking him for 2 weeks. Every day the hunt intensified. Every engagement became more dangerous. König was learning Zaytsev's patterns faster than Zaytsev was learning König's. At 6:47 a.m., a German soldier emerged from a trench and ran toward a collapsed building. Zaytsev tracked him through iron sights. Easy shot, range 180 yards. But Zaytsev didn't fire. Something felt wrong. The soldier's movement was too obvious, too exposed. No experienced Wehrmacht soldier would run across open ground like that. This was bait. König was watching, waiting for Zaytsev to reveal his position. The German soldier reached cover safely. Zaytsev remained motionless. His discipline had just saved his life. At 8:15 a.m., Zaytsev's spotter, Nikolai Kulikov, crawled into the boiler room. Kulikov was 19 years old, nervous, inexperienced. He'd been assigned to Zaytsev 3 days ago. Political officer Danilov insisted Zaytsev needed a spotter. Zaytsev had worked alone his entire time in Stalingrad. He preferred working alone, but orders were orders. Kulikov whispered, "I saw movement, northeast sector, 300 yards, looks like a sniper position." Zaytsev studied the area. Destroyed grain elevator, multiple floors, dozens of potential firing positions. He saw nothing unusual. "What did you see?" "Reflection. From a scope maybe, just for a second." Reflections were rare. Good snipers controlled scope glare. But everyone made mistakes eventually, even König. Zaytsev watched the grain elevator for 20 minutes. No movement, no additional reflections. At 9:03 a.m., Kulikov moved. He shifted position slightly, trying to get a better view of the grain elevator. The movement was small, maybe 6 inches, but it was enough. A single shot cracked across the factory yard. The bullet hit Kulikov in the left shoulder. He screamed. Blood sprayed across the boiler room floor. Zaytsev grabbed Kulikov and dragged him deeper into the boiler room, away from the pipe opening. Another shot hit the pipes. Metal sparked. The German sniper had them pinned. Zaytsev couldn't return fire without exposing himself. He couldn't evacuate Kulikov without both of them dying. Kulikov was bleeding heavily. The bullet had shattered his clavicle and lodged near his lung. He needed medical attention within 20 minutes or he'd die from blood loss. But the nearest Soviet medic was 100 yards away across open ground. Impossible to reach while König was watching. Zaytsev tore fabric from his uniform and packed the wound. Kulikov was going into shock. His breathing was rapid and shallow. His skin turned pale. Zaytsev needed to create a diversion, something to pull König's attention away long enough to evacuate the wounded spotter. He removed his helmet and placed it on a broken pipe, positioning it so it would be visible from the grain elevator. Then he used a piece of wire to move the helmet slightly, creating the illusion of head movement. König fired immediately. The bullet hit the helmet and knocked it off the pipe. The bait had worked. König believed he'd just killed Zaytsev. Zaytsev waited 40 seconds. Then he dragged Kulikov to the boiler room's rear exit and signaled for help. 2 Soviet soldiers ran forward and pulled Kulikov to safety. König didn't fire. He was probably repositioning, moving to a new location to avoid counter-sniper fire. Kulikov survived. Soviet medics stabilized him and evacuated him across the Volga. He would never return to Stalingrad. His sniper career ended after 3 days. But he was alive. Zaytsev had saved him. That afternoon, political officer Danilov visited Zaytsev's position. He was angry. "König wounded one of our men. This duel has gone on too long. Moscow is asking questions. They want results. I'll kill him when the opportunity presents itself," Zaytsev said. "That's not good enough. We need König dead now. His existence is damaging morale. German soldiers are gaining confidence because one of their snipers is surviving against our best man. This is unacceptable. Want to see how this deadly chess match ends? Please hit that like button and subscribe." Back to the duel. Zaytsev understood the political pressure. He'd become a propaganda symbol. Soviet newspapers called him invincible. Radio Moscow announced his kill count daily. Now König was challenging that narrative. Every day König survived made Soviet propaganda look like lies. But Zaytsev couldn't rush. Rushing led to mistakes. Mistakes led to death. He would continue hunting König methodically, patiently, professionally. Politics didn't matter in a sniper duel. Only skill mattered. On November 6th, Zaytsev changed tactics. Instead of operating in the chemical factory, he moved to the Lazur district's residential sector. Destroyed apartment buildings, narrow streets, different geometry. If König had been studying Zaytsev's patterns in the factory, those patterns were now irrelevant. Zaytsev was forcing König to restart his analysis. For 2 days, Zaytsev operated in the residential sector without contact. He killed 7 German soldiers, all confirmed kills, all clean shots. But König didn't appear. The German sniper was being patient too, waiting for Zaytsev to make a mistake. On November 8th, Soviet intelligence intercepted a German radio transmission. The message was encrypted, but Soviet codebreakers decrypted it within 6 hours. The transmission originated from Wehrmacht command in Stalingrad and was addressed to Berlin. It reported that Major König had engaged the Soviet sniper Zaytsev multiple times, but had not yet eliminated the target. The message requested additional time and resources. This confirmed what Zaytsev already knew. König was the German sniper, not just any sniper. A major, an instructor, someone important enough to communicate directly with Berlin. This was the Wehrmacht's best man. Soviet command shared this intelligence with Zaytsev. Political officer Danilov suggested using the information to set a trap. If they knew König was communicating with Berlin, they could track his radio transmissions and locate his position. Zaytsev rejected the idea. Radio direction finding was imprecise. König was too smart to transmit from his actual sniping position. He'd transmit from a different location, then move. Following the radio signal would lead Soviet forces into an ambush. No, Zaytsev would continue hunting König the traditional way. Observation, analysis, patience. Eventually, König would make a mistake. Everyone made mistakes. On November 10th, the weather changed again. Temperature dropped to 9 degrees, heavy snow. Visibility reduced to 100 yards. Sniper operations became nearly impossible. Both Zaytsev and König stayed hidden, waiting for conditions to improve. During the snowstorm, Zaytsev studied maps of Stalingrad's central sector. He analyzed every position König had used in previous engagements. The grain elevator, the water tower, the destroyed office building. König preferred elevated positions with panoramic views, positions that offered multiple escape routes, positions that were difficult to approach. Zaytsev looked for patterns. König's positions were always 300 to 400 yards from Soviet lines, never closer, never farther. This was deliberate. At 300 yards, König's Zeiss scope gave him clear target identification. At 400 yards, he was out of effective range for Soviet countersnipers using iron sights. This range preference was König's weakness. If Zaytsev could force an engagement at 500 yards or more, König's optical advantage would diminish. At extreme range, atmospheric conditions affected scoped rifles more than iron sights. Wind drift, temperature variations, mirage effects. All of these factors reduce scope effectiveness. But how could Zaytsev force König to engage at extreme range? The German chose his positions carefully. He wouldn't take a 500-yard shot unless the target was worth the risk. Zaytsev needed to create a target König couldn't resist, something valuable, something that would make the German break his own tactical rules. On November 11th, the snow stopped, visibility improved, temperature rose to 23 degrees. Both snipers resumed operations. Zaytsev positioned himself in a destroyed apartment building overlooking Krasnaya Square. The building's fourth floor offered excellent observation of German positions, but it was exposed. König could see this building from multiple locations. If Zaytsev operated here, König would eventually spot him. That was exactly what Zaytsev wanted. He was making himself visible. Not obviously visible, just visible enough. He wanted König to find him, but he needed to control when and how that discovery happened. At 10:42 a.m., Zaytsev killed a German soldier at 260 yards, clean headshot. The kill was intentional provocation. He wanted König to hear about it. German command would report the kill to König. König would investigate. At 2:15 p.m., Zaytsev killed another German soldier. Same sector, same range, same type of shot. Another provocation. He was establishing a pattern, operating from the same building, using the same tactics, breaking his own rules about never staying in one position. König would notice. König studied patterns. That's what made him dangerous. Zaytsev was feeding König a false pattern, making the German think he'd become careless. On November 12th, Zaytsev killed 3 more Germans from the same building. By now, Wehrmacht command had definitely noticed. Soviet sniper operating from the destroyed apartment overlooking Krasnaya Square. Multiple kills, same location, same methods. This information would reach König within hours. The German would plan his counterattack. He'd study the apartment building, identify Zaytsev's firing position, calculate range and angles. Then he'd set up his own position and wait for Zaytsev to appear. Zaytsev was counting on this. He'd spent 3 days establishing a false pattern. Now, he would exploit König's response to that pattern. On November 13th at dawn, Zaytsev did not go to the apartment building. Instead, he positioned himself 480 yards away in a destroyed factory smokestack. The smokestack offered no view of Soviet positions. It offered no tactical value for killing Germans, but it had a perfect view of the locations where König might position himself to watch the apartment building. Zaytsev had created a trap. The apartment building was bait. König would focus on that building, waiting for Zaytsev to appear. While König watched the bait, Zaytsev would be watching König. At 7:23 a.m., Zaytsev saw movement. A figure in German uniform climbed into position behind rubble 390 yards from the apartment building. The figure moved carefully, professionally. He was carrying a scoped rifle. He settled into a concealed position with clear line of sight to the apartment building's 4th floor. König. It had to be. No regular Wehrmacht soldier moved like that. No regular soldier would position himself specifically to countersnipe the apartment building. Zaytsev watched through his iron sights. König was 480 yards away. Difficult shot. Very difficult, but possible. Zaytsev had made shots at this range before, hunting elk in the Urals. He knew how to calculate the ballistics, but he didn't shoot, not yet. He needed König to commit fully to his position. Right now, König might still be reconnoitering. He might move to a different location. Zaytsev needed to wait until König was settled, focused, distracted. At 8:50 a.m., Zaytsev saw König adjust his scope. The German was scanning the apartment building methodically, floor by floor, window window, looking for any sign of Soviet activity. Zaytsev placed a helmet on a stick and raised it slowly in one of the apartment building's windows. The helmet was visible for 3 seconds. König fired immediately. The bullet hit the helmet and knocked it backward. König had taken the bait. Now, König believed Zaytsev was in the apartment building. The German would focus exclusively on that location. His attention would be fixed. His situational awareness would narrow. This was the moment. Zaytsev aimed at König's position. He could see approximately 12 inches of the German's left shoulder and part of his head. Not much, but enough. Range 480 yards. Wind from the east at approximately 6 miles per hour. Temperature 21 degrees. Atmospheric pressure standard. Zaytsev calculated bullet drop. At 480 yards, the 7.62 by 54 mm round would drop approximately 52 inches below line of sight. He adjusted his aim accordingly. He also calculated wind drift. The crosswind would push the bullet approximately 9 inches left. He compensated. His breathing slowed. His heart rate dropped to 48 beats per minute. The rifle steadied. His finger touched the trigger, not pulling, just contact, feeling the weapon, becoming one with it. At 8:53 a.m., König shifted position slightly. For exactly 1.4 seconds, his head was fully visible above the rubble. Zaytsev fired. The bullet crossed 480 yards in approximately 0.53 seconds. It struck König in the left temple. The German sniper died instantly. His body slumped forward over his rifle. Zaytsev watched through his sights for 2 minutes. No movement from König's position, no German soldiers rushing to help. The kill was confirmed. Zaytsev descended from the smokestack and reported to political officer Danilov. König is dead. Danilov was skeptical. You're certain? I'm certain. How do you know it was König? Because no one else would have positioned themselves exactly where he did. That location was perfect for counter-sniping the apartment building. Only an expert would have chosen it. Soviet command needed confirmation. They sent a reconnaissance team to König's position that night. The team recovered a body, German major, carrying a Karabiner 98K with Zeiss scope. Documents identified him as Erwin König, Wehrmacht sniper instructor. The confirmation reached Moscow within 24 hours. Radio Moscow announced Zaytsev's victory. Soviet newspapers published articles celebrating the duel's conclusion. Zaytsev was promoted to lieutenant. His confirmed kill count now stood at 242 Germans. But Zaytsev felt no celebration. König had been a worthy opponent, a professional, someone who understood the craft at the highest level. His death was necessary but not satisfying. War had no satisfaction, only survival. On November 15th, 2 days after killing König, Zaytsev returned to active operations. His kill count was now 242. Soviet command wanted him to reach 300 before the end of the year. Political officer Danilov said 300 kills would be symbolically important. A round number. Good for propaganda, good for morale. Zaytsev didn't care about symbolism. He cared about eliminating German soldiers. Each kill was one less Wehrmacht soldier shooting at Soviet troops. Each kill saved Soviet lives. That was the only metric that mattered. But killing König had changed something. German snipers operated differently now. They were more cautious, more disciplined. They'd learned that Soviet counter-snipers were deadly. The psychological advantage had shifted. For months, German snipers had terrorized Soviet positions with impunity. Now, they were the ones being hunted. On November 18th, Zaytsev was operating near the Barricadi factory when a German mortar round exploded 40 yards from his position. Shrapnel hit him in the right eye. He felt immediate blinding pain. Blood poured down his face. He couldn't see from his right eye. His left eye vision was blurred. Soviet medics evacuated him to a field hospital on the eastern bank of the Volga. The doctor examined his injuries. The right eye was destroyed. Shrapnel had penetrated the cornea and ruptured the lens. The eye couldn't be saved. His left eye had sustained minor damage from blast concussion, but would recover with rest. The doctor told Zaytsev his sniper career was over. Depth perception required 2 eyes. Without depth perception, he couldn't accurately estimate range. Without accurate range estimation, he couldn't make long-distance shots. Zaytsev refused to accept this. He would adapt, learn to estimate range with 1 eye. Humans had other depth perception cues beyond stereoscopic vision: size comparison, atmospheric perspective, motion parallax. He would master these techniques, but the Red Army had different plans. On November 22nd, Zaytsev was evacuated to Moscow for advanced medical treatment. Soviet propaganda needed him alive and functional. He was too valuable as a symbol to risk losing him to infection or inadequate treatment. In Moscow, surgeons operated on his left eye. They removed microscopic shrapnel fragments and repaired damaged blood vessels. The prognosis was good. His left eye would regain full function within 6 weeks. During his recovery, Zaytsev was celebrated as a national hero. He met with Soviet officials. He gave interviews to journalists. He appeared in propaganda films. The fame felt wrong. He was a soldier, not a celebrity. His skills belonged on the battlefield, not in Moscow's propaganda offices. On January 10, 1943, doctors cleared Zaytsev to return to duty. His left eye had healed completely. His right eye socket was fitted with a glass prosthetic. He'd learned to compensate for the loss of depth perception. Not perfectly, but adequately. He could still shoot. He could still hunt. He returned to Stalingrad on January 15th. The city had changed. Soviet forces had launched Operation Uranus in November, encircling the German 6th Army. The Wehrmacht was now trapped, starving, freezing, dying. The battle was entering its final phase. Zaytsev resumed sniper operations. His first kill after returning was a German officer at 340 yards. Clean shot. His range estimation had been accurate despite having 1 eye. The techniques he'd developed worked. By January 31st, his kill count reached 257. On February 2nd, the German 6th Army surrendered. The Battle of Stalingrad was over. Soviet forces had won. The turning point of the war had come. Zaytsev continued serving in the Red Army until the war ended in 1945. His final confirmed kill count was 242, though some sources claim it was higher. After the war, he worked as an engineer in Kiev. He rarely spoke about Stalingrad. When asked about König, he always said the same thing: he was a worthy opponent. Vasily Zaytsev died on December 15, 1991, age 76. He was buried in Volgograd, formerly Stalingrad. His grave overlooks the city he defended, the city where 11 days in November 1943 became the most famous sniper duel in history. That's the story of Vasily Zaytsev and Erwin König. 2 masters, 1 battlefield. Only 1 survived. If you want more forgotten stories from World War II, hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss these incredible true stories. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Thanks for watching.